You know that sinking feeling when you realize that you've been doing something completely wrong for years, and then it suddenly hits you? It was an easier way all along, like the time I moved to Paris because I wanted to learn French, and I spent the first 3 months just sitting at home doing grammar exercises. That was a complete waste of time. This also happened to my student Alison, so she'd been learning Italian, doing everything right, but still couldn't actually string a sentence together. Very frustrating. But then she tried a completely different approach and everything changed. When she finally went to Italy, she spent the entire trip chatting with the locals with lots of confidence, like she's been speaking Italian for years. And the big shift wasn't how much she studied, it wasn't a different course or a new app, it was how she started using her brain. See, your brain actually has a built-in language system. The thing is, most people never switch it on, and there's real science behind that. It turns out that 95% of people struggle with language learning, but it has nothing to do with your talent or intelligence. I should know, because I've got none of that. My name is Olly Richards. I've learned 8 languages. I've written 25 best-selling language books. I've helped thousands of people learn to speak a new language confidently. And I've seen this again and again. The students who succeed are not necessarily the smartest. They're the ones who figure out how to work with their brain, not against it. So in this video, I'm going to show you the exact method you can use that separates those 5% who become fluent from the 95% who end up giving up. Once you see how it works, you won't want to learn languages any other way. When you were a kid learning your first language, your mother tongue, did anyone hand you a grammar chart at any point? Did you sit there drilling verbs or lists of vocabulary? Of course you didn't. You were far too busy trying to convince your parents that cookie counted as a vegetable. See, back then, your brain was running a completely different operating system. You would hear stories, you'd hear people talking around you, you saw language in action, you picked it up through context. Your brain built those language pathways naturally through narrative, through hearing things around and making sense. But then you grew up, didn't you? And like most adults, you started doing the complete opposite. That's what I did when I went to school. You got the textbook, you got the mountain of flashcards, you got a grammar book for the first time and started realizing there were these grammar rules and things. Without realizing it, you torpedoed your brain's natural ability to learn languages and you set yourself up to struggle. That's right. So every time you sit down to cram grammar or drill vocabulary, you are literally rewiring your brain to fight against the way it was designed to learn. It's like trying to drive a Ferrari in reverse with the handbrake on. I mean, what is that all about? Now, here's the important part. You actually need to do less if you want to learn more, because your brain already has a system built in for learning languages. If it didn't, you wouldn't have been able to learn your first language, your mother tongue. Traditional methods just usually get in the way of this natural ability, but don't panic, because I will show you exactly how to work with it, not against it. And by the way, if you just want to jump straight to the method, then you can get my free fluency blueprint. There's a link in the description, or you can scan the QR code on the screen. It walks you through this brain-based method step by step, so you can start using it right away. It works no matter what language you are learning, and you'll find a bunch of helpful tools inside here, like printable trackers, study sheets, and some bonus guides to help you figure out what language you actually want to learn if you are still deciding. It's completely free, QR code up there or link in the description. Thousands of people are already using it and loving it, so it's there if you want it. So do less to learn more. It comes down to the science of the brain and what your brain actually needs to learn a language. There is a lot that scientists do not know about how we acquire languages, but something they do know is that when you are drilling flashcards or doing grammar exercises, all these study things, you're actually only activating 2 very small areas of your brain. That's it. Everything else is dormant. But when your brain hears a story in another language, it's a totally different picture inside your brain. It literally looks different. And here's where it gets interesting. MRI scans show that when you learn something through stories, your brain lights up in more places than usual. Why? Because stories don't just activate your language centers, they light up a powerful network in your brain, the ones responsible for memory, emotion, movement, even social skills. See, your brain doesn't just want words it can understand on a technical level, it wants stories, it wants emotion, stakes, something to care about. If it doesn't have that, it will tune out. So let's break this down and stick with me because this is cool. First up is your default mode network. This is what switches on when you are daydreaming. reliving a memory, thinking about something else. It's your brain's meaning maker. And that's why your brain is literally obsessed with stories, because it uses these stories to make sense of the world. So when you follow a character through a story, you're not just reading the words, you're living in their world. Your brain starts wanting to think in the new language because it's too busy keeping up with the story to bother with technical translation, which is quite cool. So if you want your brain to remember something, wrap it in a story and watch what happens. Next up is your sensory motor network. And this fires up when you read about something vivid, like a character walking through a bustling market or biting into a warm piece of bread fresh out of the oven. Your brain doesn't just understand the words, it reacts as if you were actually there, experiencing it firsthand, like warm ciabatta just coming out of the oven. That triggers things, doesn't it? So every Italian word you pick up in a story about an art heist in Rome, it's not just vocabulary, it's tied to a virtual memory that your brain now thinks is real. That's powerful. Then there is your social cognition network. This kicks in when you're trying to understand what someone else is thinking or feeling. So when you read about a character fumbling through an awkward conversation, you feel that moment with them. You're in their shoes. You feel that awkwardness. So same thing happens as before. You're not just learning lines, you're practicing real social moments, and your brain treats those moments like an actual experience, the kind it wants to remember. That is, of course, if the story is a good one. Okay, so you're probably thinking that this sounds a little bit too good to be true or a little bit too simple or easy. Let me show you this brain hack in action with a real learner who actually used it. I want you to meet Jannah. She is a lovely person. We met not so long ago for coffee in London, and she told me all about her story. Now, Jannah had this wild idea. She wanted to surprise her best friend, Aisha, with a full conversation at a restaurant in Japanese, which was Aisha's language. The only problem was, you guessed it, Jannah spoke absolutely no Japanese whatsoever, not even konnichiwa. Well, she might have known that word, but not much beyond that. Here's where the brain hacking gets interesting. See, instead of doing what most people would do, which is buying the grammar books and torturing herself with Japanese grammar drills, she found a way to use her brain's natural abilities to learn using story-based resources. In fact, she used my Japanese Uncovered course. It's a story-based language course. And for 6 months, that's all she did. There was no cramming, there was no pressure, just pure immersion that tricked her brain into thinking it was living in some kind of Japanese fantasy land. And when the big dinner finally came, here's what Jannah said.
I can't even tell you how nervous I was. And the conversation happened, and it was like literally the best thing I've ever done in my whole life.
Her friend was stunned. 6 months only from zero to confident conversation in a very difficult language. Now, this is not a fluke. I've seen the same shift happen again and again when people stop fighting their brain and start working with it. And honestly, some of my biggest personal breakthroughs in my own language learning, they didn't come from the easiest languages. They came from some of the harder ones that I connected with emotionally. Now, if you want to try learning a language with stories, there are some rules you have to follow to make it work. There are 10 of them, in fact, 10 rules, and here they are in reverse order. Read at your level. Now, this rule is huge because everything else depends on it. It's a bit like the pin in the grenade. If you want to learn a language by reading, you have to read at your level. If the story is too hard, your brain freaks out and shuts down. If it's too easy, your brain will get bored. The sweet spot is in the zone where you understand about 7 or 8 out of every 10 words that you are hearing or reading, just enough to follow along with the story, but where it's that you still have to push yourself to understand. This is where the magic happens. If reading hasn't worked for you before, chances are the text was just too hard for you, so you gave up and went back to something else. Next, focus on the plot. Now, when people learn languages, they're often desperate for the learning to happen, and that's when they start looking up words in the dictionary or worrying about grammar. I mean, I remember myself reading a story and having a dictionary next to me and trying to translate every single word that I didn't understand. You can't do that. See, the magic happens when you focus on just one thing in your brain as you read. The plot. Because when you understand the message of what you're reading, your brain will naturally be able to pick up vocabulary and even grammar. You don't need to understand every word. You just need to understand the gist of what you're reading. So as you're reading, you have one job, which is follow the story along from the beginning right to the end, and don't look up words unless you absolutely have to. Next, door closed, phone off. This is a huge one. There's a famous study that says If you get interrupted mid-task, it takes 23 minutes to refocus. Now, that sounds extreme, but we all know how easy it is to lose that flow. When it comes to language learning, focus is everything. The deeper your focus is, the more you learn. So when it's time to study, sit down, shut the door, for heaven's sake, turn off that phone. Give your brain a chance to really show you what it can do. Depth of focus equals learning. Next, learn the script. If the language you're learning has a different script or alphabet, like Arabic or Japanese or Russian, don't put it off. Don't kick the can down the road. Just learn it. Most scripts are not as hard as you think. You can learn Japanese hiragana or Russian Cyrillic in just a weekend. And once you do, it's like stepping through the wardrobe into Narnia. You unlock a whole new world. And yes, it will take some time to read fluently. It does take time, but it's like planting a tree. There's never a better time to do it than right now. So don't wait to learn the script. Yes, it's new. Yes, it's different, but learn it now because it's the key that unlocks reading, which then unlocks everything else. Next up is do not look up words. Now, this is similar to our earlier rule, which is focus on the plot. Very specifically, though, this rule, do not look up words. Now, it is tempting, I know. You hit a word you don't understand and your brain screams, I must understand this, so quick, check the dictionary. It's natural. We don't like ambiguity. We don't like not knowing things, but you must train yourself not to look up every word because it's a slippery slope. The second you stop to look up one word, you're breaking your flow and suddenly you're looking up every single word. The truth is, you don't need to understand every word in a sentence in order to follow along. If you can just follow the gist, just follow the plot, that is enough. Because what happens is you start to develop the ability to guess a word from the context around it. You then have a sense of ownership of that word because you've had to think. You know what it's like when you look up a word in the dictionary, you look up the meaning and you go back to reading and 2 minutes later you've forgotten the word that you've just looked up. It's not an efficient way for your brain to retain information. If you can guess a word from context, even if you're a little bit fuzzy, it will stick way better than any translation ever could. So focus on the story, don't look up words, trust your brain. Next is listen while reading. Now, reading and listening together doesn't take up much extra time. From time to time, you've got to kind of rewind and the audio might go a little bit fast, but it's something you can do together. What it does do, though, is it gives you double the benefit because you're training your ears and your eyes to function together at the same time. This is huge for the brain. It's an extra source of input. Listening also has its own magic because listening to the audio activates different parts of your brain than just your eyes would. And this is going to help you learn faster and get words into your long-term memory. Now, of course, the great thing about having audio available is that when you can't read, like if you're driving, then you can be listening. I do this all the time in the gym. I can't really read when I'm lifting weights or whatever, but I can be listening to the audio. So the audio and just having it there gives you this extra tool in the box. Next up, we have a very simple rule, which is read it and then read it again. Learning through stories or story learning is all about reading, and the magic of reading is that you learn words and grammar naturally because your brain starts to notice patterns all by itself. But here's the secret. This only happens when you read something more than once. It's a bit like a great movie where each time you watch it, you notice details that you didn't spot first time round. First time you read something, you're just trying to follow the story. Second time, your brain already knows what's happening, so it starts to notice words and grammar that you might have missed before. And by the third time, well, I think you get the idea. Next up is do not study grammar. Now, this freaks people out. They say, but isn't grammar like the most important thing? How can you put words together if you don't know the grammar? Well, yes, grammar is important, but it's not everything. And it's definitely not the best place to start. Now, I am not hating on grammar. Don't misunderstand me. I love grammar. I enjoy learning it. But the trouble is this. Grammar can take over. And before you know it, you are neck deep in rules, trying to memorize these rules and not actually using the language or learning enough of the other stuff like vocabulary in order to actually get anywhere. Truth is, grammar just is not as important as you think, at least not until you are more advanced. So I'm not saying you should completely ignore it, but for now, let it go. Be comfortable not knowing everything about it and focus on the story instead. You will find that you will learn more grammar naturally just by following along with the story than you expect with a lot less effort. And it's also a lot more fun that way. Next rule is to learn every day. Now, back in 2020, you know the year that I'm talking about, I got a bit stressed, like everyone did, and I started going for a daily walk. And 1 hour of walking first thing in the morning, sometimes 2 hours, it was great. I had a way to stay active during lockdown and just clear my head. A few months later, though, I jumped on the scales and realized I'd lost 5 kilos. Those are the days. I've put that back on now and probably a bit more besides. But I'd lost 5 kilos just like that from a simple daily habit. And this is how language learning works too. If you show up every day, even for like just 10 minutes, your brain starts to condition itself. It starts to adapt. You just need to stay in the game and let time do the heavy lifting. So even on days when you're tired or distracted, or you feel like nothing is going your way, just sit down, open the story, read a little bit, because here is what matters most. Trust the process. Now, your brain, I'm sorry to tell you, does not work on your schedule. You won't get fireworks every time you sit down to study. Some days you'll feel like a genius, other days you'll feel like you've forgotten everything. I feel you. I've been there way too often for years and years and years. But it's also why people jump from one app to the next app, or from one book to the next, or one course to the next course, or whatever, always searching for the magic bullet. Don't let that be you. So slow and steady is the secret. Just let things build quietly under the surface and trust that the process is working. Learning a language is a long road. It's not quick and easy, despite what the apps promise you. You've got to be patient. You've got to just show up every day, read, and trust that it's working, even when it feels like it's not. But trust me, if you are doing these things, it is working. I first learned these rules myself during a very strange near-death experience in Argentina when I was learning Spanish. I'll put the story up here in a card for you to check out if you're interested. But since that worked for me and helped me become fluent in Spanish, I started to figure out, to ask myself the question, how can I use these rules to help other people learn languages as well? So I started reverse engineering what happened to me with my Spanish and testing this story-based method across many different languages, to the point where we now teach 15 different languages at Story Learning. I got a bit carried away, I suppose, and ended up helping over 1 million people do the same thing between my courses and my books. The bottom line is, you are not broken. It is the standardized methods that are. It's these methods that keep you swimming upstream against millions of years of evolution. Your brain is way more sophisticated than any textbook ever written. You just got to feed it the right kind of input and it will figure things out. It's like trying to eat soup with a fork. You're not the problem, it's the tool that you're using. Your brain already has the perfect system for picking up a language. You've just got to stop getting in the way. Meanwhile, stories activate your brain's natural learning network. So new words, they start slipping into your long-term memory without you even realizing it. And 10, 15 minutes a day is enough to start doing this and rewiring your brain. It's not a question of cramming like you used to for exams, memorizing lists of words. Instead, it's by feeding your brain the one thing that it has always loved and will always love, which is a good story. And let's be honest, that is less time than you spend choosing the thing that you're about to watch on Netflix. But this is just the beginning. If you want to see what happens to your brain, how your brain develops after years of learning a language in this way, well, check out this video right here. You won't believe how your brain changes in ways that you would never, ever, ever expect.